In your TV days?
Yeah, we were writing late night jokes. Yeah.
So they come in and they're like, all right, well, here's our main headlines that we got to cover. And then I'll write up till filming is somebody keeping half an eye on CNN or whatever, making sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There were times when you would have stuff drop at the very last second and you would have to write like 10 jokes as quickly as possible. That's a weird skill to have. Like, I've since had to do it a couple of times. I was a producer on the MTV Movie Awards a few years ago. I worked on a TNT roast of the Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny Smith. And when they need a joke very quickly, it's almost like a magic trick where they can just like shove you in a room and you write as quickly as you can and just produce like 10 jokes. They're not going to be particularly great, but that's when you then have a room that can just kind of punch them up and deal with it. It turns into a weird math where you think of like, you know, like I was talking about with that Suez Canal joke where you come very quickly to that conclusion and then you work from there.
I mean, when, 10 minutes to air or whatever, and then just got, somebody tweeted something and this is now the news story. I assume that the easiest joke is at least a little bit fair game 10 minutes before. Nope, you still got to check it and get something else.
Yeah, I mean, it'll always end up on there. Somebody will be like, hey, this is the... I always say it's the uncle joke because I'm a dad. So I don't want to say it's the dad joke. I don't want to... Why are we banging on dads? But yeah, it'll be on there. I remember honestly, I owe these two guys probably like 70% of my paycheck, and it's very clear what like a different, goofier time this was. I wrote so many jokes about Rob Ford and Anthony Weiner.
Sure.
And Chris Christie. You obviously don't want people cursing on the podcast, right?
Mostly not.
All right, so I will abbreviate what he said very, very quickly. But Chris Christie, we would make fun of Chris Christie all the time. We'd just constantly bang on Chris Christie. And we were all writing. We had like some assignment due, and we were in the writer's room, and everybody faced away from the door. And all of a sudden, I could just feel, sometimes you just feel somebody looking at you. And I turned around, and it was Chris Christie. And we knew he was going to be a guest on the show that day. Like, he'd agreed to come in, but it was funny. No guest ever comes into the writer's room. And he's standing there, and I like got one of my other coworkers, and eventually everybody turns around and looks at him after like 5-10 seconds. And he slowly pans the room and then goes, "You mother effers," and then left. And I was like, yeah, every one of us at that point deserved it. Like, yeah.
I don't think you could have been a worse human being than Chris Christie. So.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah. For clearing out the beach, what was that on? Was it 4th of July alone? Chris Christie is terrible. And Ford wasn't that Canada's mayor that was smoking crack, or am I disparaging?
We were already writing a ton of jokes about him, and then he got caught smoking crack. I remember when Jimmy was dumbfounded when they were like, "Hey, he got caught smoking crack." Jimmy literally sat back, like, I can't. What do I do with this guy? I don't. Smoking crack? Yeah, I remember that was the first reaction, where he looked back at the writer's assistant and just goes, "Smoking crack?" Just like, how in 2013 are you having the most 1987 scandal possible? Like, smoking crack? Yeah.
That's got to be impossible to make jokes when the news gets that weird. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. My joke was going to be you smoke crack, but you did that, so there's no runway left.
Eating everything I can do. I don't want to blow up the news, but I mean the Matt Gaetz being in the. Yeah, we probably want to cut that from the podcast.
We could talk about Matt Gaetz, but this will come out like the first or second week of May because we record ahead of time, and by then, hopefully, Matt Gaetz will be a fine, upstanding citizen again, and all of this will have gone away. That joke is he was never a fine, upstanding citizen.
Did you obviously both of our personal hero, moral and political, Matt Gaetz.
Thought that one without saying. Sure.
I actually donated to his campaign in the name of the Jared Fogle Dinner Theater. Do you know what he did today? Did you hear what he got?
I saw he was paying some 17-year-old. I don't know what the exact scandal is. So you tell esteemed audience.
Yeah, you're done.
I hope so, but I don't think they count on that side of the aisle anymore. I don't think there are scandals on the Republican side.
Isn't it crazy that I have felt like this forever, and it is something I've always whatever someone is yelling about the loudest is always their biggest insecurity. You know, like Matt Gaetz being like, human trafficking, and they're all human trafficking, and it's like, of course you're going to get picked up for that. Of course that's what you're doing. Like, whatever people are really mad about, that's what they are doing or what they would do. You know?
Usually, if somebody is really, if it's like a television minister that's really outspoken about homosexuality, it's just countdown to the sex tape.
It's that train is never late. It's always like, hey, he was in a church parking lot, and you're like, of course he was. Why was he? Who cares? Maybe that's the reveal. Is just like whatever you're mad about, that's what you really care about. And so, yeah, that's probably why you're up to underhanded nonsense.
Yeah, it's the problem with a show like this where we record ahead of time is like, especially during the Trump years, was like, okay, well, we could talk about today's scandal.
Yeah.
But by the time this airs, we will be 25, 30 scandals behind, and none of it will matter.
No, just completely irrelevant. I was on a rowing team in college, and it is my favorite. I wish everyone in America had rowed at some point in high school or college, because they would understand that Donald Trump Jr. rowed for 1 year at the University of Pennsylvania, and he went 7:02 for 2,000 meters, which is the most embarrassing statistic. I get the slowest guy on our team went 6:40, and I couldn't look him in the eye. Where it's just like, what's going on, man? Because if you're there. Rowing is not a sport that requires a lot of athleticism. It is just like pulling on a chain. You're pulling on a rowing machine. And ultimately, it just becomes like how much pain you're kind of willing to deal with is like, it's a combination of like you groove in the aerobic ability, and then you kind of groove in the I don't know, like the muscle repetition. And if you're going 7:02, it means you're just soft. You're just so cookie soft. And so for that guy to have his fake tough guy routine where he's like killing elephants and giraffes in Africa like he's Ernest Hemingway, God, that made me so furious. He went to Penn, and I was on a rowing team briefly in high school, and I got recruited because I was so big, and I was at Penn the day that they were having a 2,000 meter test, and I was like, is that Donald Trump's kid? And they're like, yeah, but he goes 7:02, and then they all like goofed on him because he was just such a wuss. And I don't know. I mean, there was no one over the past 4 years annoyed me more than that guy acting like he was tough. It's like, you're not. I know you. I've seen tangible proof that you're not. Yeah.
When you're in a writer's room and you get to make jokes about whatever the political scandal is, do you feel like more than I've got a Twitter account and I can tell everybody how angry I am? Do you feel like that lets off some steam? Like you maybe will influence viewers one way or the other, or is it nope, just still makes you angry and there isn't much to be done?
Oh, there's there's something like not funny about anger that you really kind of ride the line. I think that's what. Like, I sat next to Jess Dweck, who, if you are on Twitter, Jess Dweck should be mandatory. She should get, your Twitter account should start with following Jess Dweck like we used to do with Tom and MySpace. Like, you'd just be mandatory that you're constantly reading her tweets. Jess Dweck dropped out of Yale Law School and Caltech's Jet Propulsion program. She dropped out of like each of those in succession to write, and she was writing to write jokes, and she ended up writing at Fallon, and she would just like, she would come up with jokes where it's just like, my brain just doesn't work that nearly as well as yours. Like, I don't know how you managed to come up with that was so well articulated, had such a fun twist, and also like just crushed the actual the premise or whatever. Like, we and this is her dumbest joke, but we used to have video clips, and there was a clip of Beyonce came out at a concert, and then there were like 3 giant like windmill fans behind her, and her hair got caught in one of the windmills, like slowly twisting windmills. So like, obviously she was never in danger, and someone came up and just cut her out of it. But she was there for a second, like trying to sing, and you could see her hair caught in this thing. And Jess Dweck's, everybody's writing jokes, whatever. Jess Dweck's joke was, afterwards the machine was like, "I'm sorry, Beyonce, it's just I'm such a huge fan." Right? And you're just like, I'm so mad that I hadn't thought of that, and it was just so perfectly worded, and yeah,